Several events are being held across the country in the build-up to the elections, and top on the agenda is the security situation across the nation. These security agents here are from the police force and other security agencies. They have just concluded a 4-week course from the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center on electoral violence and security. Participants here believe they are ready for the elections.
Our expectation is that even the police officers and the ladies who received this training, they will spread it all over the country somehow in order to inform and to teach even their colleagues, who has not the beneficiary or the privilege to join our course. And therefore, I'm quite convinced, I'm sure that the election will be conducted, supported by all the security agencies in a very professional and successful manner.
However, it is not just the security agents that are charged with keeping the peace. Everyone is a major player, as stated by speakers at this presidential summit.
Creating an environment for free and peaceful elections is the responsibility for all politicians, especially for you, presidential candidates and other candidates for higher positions, and as well it's a responsibility for all citizens.
It's about capacity. Let Nigerians at least be opportune to have presidential candidates with capacity. People who has what it takes to understand the dynamics in the system and will have solutions for these challenging dynamics.
Politicians also give their commitment to a violence-free exercise.
I'm known to be a protagonist of peace. And so the idea that our election should end up in destabilization of the country is not something that I would ever subscribe to.
We're talking about violence. There is nothing we can do to stop violence if we cannot bring our youths on board. Now, like I said, if I'm a sitting president, I said it before and I'm saying it again, that for the first time as a sitting president, 50% of all the appointments is going to be our youths.
It is a conversation that must continue. Violence is never an option, and that is a fact everyone must embrace. Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
Welcome back. Well, yes, in continuing that conversation, we're going to be looking at it with from a different kind of perspective this morning, and you'll see why. We have Professor Akin Oyebode here with us. He's a professor of international law. Thank you for coming on. And complimentary season to you, sir.
Same to you, as we say. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, you just came back from Madagascar to observe the elections there. And the country has a little bit of political history in terms of the back and forth. But you had to share your experience and how Nigeria, yes, I know we're a far bigger country, but we could always learn things that other people are doing to improve our own situation. What was your experience when you got there?
Well, it's Madagascar. It was my first trip to the largest island adjoining Africa, and we stopped over in Moroni, part of the Comoros. My first experience of Indian Ocean and all that. But having said that, it seems to me that Antananarivo, the capital, is a picturesque tourist destination. It's an admixture of peoples. You have people of African descent, Indians, Chinese, Malays, a potpourri of nationalities. But they seem to cohabit and coexist happily. What I noticed first coming to the country was the high level of poverty. People are poor, not unlike what we have in Nigeria. You have people begging on the streets. At the airport, people wanted something that you brought by way of dollars and what have you. And I said, look, I'm a poor election observer, so I had to fend them off. But it was a learning experience for me. It's a teaching moment for us, especially in Nigeria. because we arrogate to ourselves the status of giant of Africa and all that. Some people say 200 million. I'm not sure we're up to that. But you know, like Mbadiwe used to say, big engine, big exhaust. So once you say you are a big country, it's a lot of expectation. But Madagascar is a small player, but a fascinating place. I spent 10 days there, and I was quite fascinated by the level of preparedness and the enthusiasm. When you compare to Nigeria, you don't have billboards torn on the streets. People wore T-shirts emblazoned with the pictures of their favored candidates. And there are long convoys of buses conveying supporters to rallies, chanting, and what have you. But I never noticed any sign of violence or what have you. Unlike in Nigeria, where there's a lot of premonition that hell might be let loose in another couple of weeks. But as I said, there's a lot of expectation on Nigeria. I had to brag before fellow election observers that Nigeria was going to pull it off because they were saying, what's going to happen in your country? I said, come February 19th, we're going to stand up to our billing, and we will not disappoint Africa. We had observers from the European Union, Afrique, an African think tank. We had delegates from Cameroon, from Benin Republic, from South Africa, from all sorts of places. And my own group was an international group working under the Commonwealth of Independent States, the old Soviet Union, when it broke down. They now have a Commonwealth of Independent States International Monitoring Group. So I was dragooned to that group from Moscow. My ticket came from Moscow. I think because I speak Russian, that helped. But it made me so lonely because I was in a group of people from Poland, from Bulgaria, from Russia. We didn't have Ukraine, where I studied. But a sizable punch. And, you know, we were in the hotel, ensconced from the holy-bolly of the city. But quite sincerely, Madagascar is a country I want to revisit.
So, Prof, in terms of the players in that particular election, that's why there's some sort of similarities between ours, because they had Marc Ravalomanana, former president, Andre Rajoelina, also former president, and then they had Harry, his name is not an easy one to pronounce, Harry Rajaonariman, the outgoing president, who incidentally was third in that election. So Marc Ravalomanana, former president, has said that he came second. So he was saying, look, these elections, I think normally one would say rigged here. He says it didn't come out very well. But his contemporary, Andrew Rajoelina, says he was the one who was leading. But Marc is challenging that election, even though the EU has said, look, this went well. So he's told the supporters to go ahead and stand and protest those kind of results. But in terms of the processes, because we also see that SENI, their own INEC, they were talking about publishing, number one, they can publish the ballots after the politicians may have seen it. So in that respect, how are they handling those controversial areas that we could pick a lesson or two from?
Well, the observers were received in audience by the president of the Electoral Commission, who, upon hearing that I came from Nigeria, said he had been in Abuja to visit our own chairman of INEC, and that he had fond memories of Nigeria and what have you. But in terms of the elections in November, you are right. The three leading candidates were former presidents. So it promised to be quite interesting. The results, of course, we won't say inconclusive, but because of the constitutional requirement to get the majority, 50+1, they had to do a runoff, which they did on the 19th of this month. My own experience as an observer was that apparently they had made good preparation. The lapses were in terms of directions to the voters. Voters, some of them in fact came to ask me questions. I don't speak French. I speak Russian and English. And so apparently they did not give clear-cut directions as to what polling booths to go. But we observed the process from cross-checking the voters' register when the election managers checked and cross-checked the cards, the voters' cards. And once your name is there and they cross-check, they didn't use, by the way, smart
card readers?
Yes, card readers. We didn't see any evidence of that. But I think, by and large, at least we went to 5 electoral stations.
Okay, pardon me, Prof. We'll go to break, but we'll continue from that particular point when we come back in a moment. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. Prof, could you go ahead? You were giving us your experience.
Yes, I think I want to commend the country for the level of preparation in terms of the voters' register, the polling stations, polling booths, and the high level of awareness by the population. I found voters coming with members of their family, with their children. They came for a festival, as it should be. Democracy takes elections as its festival.
They didn't shut down the whole country.
No. But I noticed, too, that certain similarities occurred between Madagascar and Nigeria. Lateness of commencement, although the thing picked up later. There are some police presence, but the police had no work to do. They were just observing, polite, and there was no harassment. I didn't see any threats or intimidation. I never saw any evidence of vote buying or manipulation. I think the people were well prepared to have their elections. And as I said before the program commenced, people wore, before the elections, they wore T-shirts emblazoned with the photographs of their favored candidates.
Did they do that on election day?
No. I'm saying before the election. Okay. You had long convoys of buses carrying supporters, singing, waving their flags. So, I mean, I think they were en route rallies and what have you. We didn't find evidence of any threat to the peace and quiet of the country.
Prof, if I may come in here, you used 2 words, preparedness and enthusiasm.
Yes.
Tell us about the preparedness bit, because obviously the people themselves were prepared. What would you say was their level of preparedness? Is it about a mindset thing?
No, I'm talking of the infrastructure.
No, wait, because I'm sure you interacted with the electorate, a few of the electorate.
Yes.
How would you say they got prepared for the elections?
Well, I think a high level of consciousness, awareness. You see, Madagascar has a checkered history in terms of electoral democracy. So the people, apparently, they've been through a lot in terms of the rivalries. And we didn't see evidence of ideological clash, despite the pretensions of one of the candidates to being a leftist, a neo-Marxist, and what have you. For them, it was a day to just go and select who should be the next president. Because I don't speak French, French is like their lingua franca. But you had people who understood English too. But I say, generally speaking, it would seem to me that the people in Madagascar were highly informed and knew what to do. You didn't need to coerce them or intimidate them into selecting one candidate or another. So that is what I mean by the level of consciousness by the voters. in terms of infrastructure, mind you, Madagascar is part of the developing world. So there are rough edges here and there. In terms, for instance, the European election observers were interested in exit polls. But exit polls is not part of their arrangement. So we couldn't ask people who you voted for. And then, of course, they wanted electronic transmission of results. We didn't see that happen. The sort of things that we are talking about here in Nigeria, some people are railing against President Buhari for not signing the Electoral Amendment Bill because it was 5 minutes to midnight. It was too late in the day, and citing some ECOWAS protocol against changing the ground rules within 6 months to the elections. So there were lapses here and there. But like I said, I personally did not see any evidence of violence, a threat of violence or intimidation. People had a fine day on the